Welcome back, everybody, to another video on the web framework series. And I just wanted to jump right in. We're going to look at a few things. So we're in modules, framework, source, compiler, and you'll notice we removed the app shell directory and we actually just put that into this app shell file in the parser. So we made some changes in this file and it's does the same thing, but there were some performance benefits that we get out of change this state function so it wouldn't conflict with a function in the Lex blocks. And we're calling parse app shell. I believe it was called parse before. So we're just setting up an instance of our Lexer and we're calling l.run. That's now a method on the Lexer. And then all this down here, we had a map before, now it's a struct. There seem to be performance benefits there, although very small. We're talking microseconds. But it's a little cleaner in my opinion as well. And then, but all this down here happens after the l.run. So we'll come back to that. So we're calling run. That's just a method on our Lexer. We've got these state functions that just kind of crunch along. There were definitely performance benefits there. It was doing it in about 3 to 4 milliseconds. Now it's around 1 to 2. So it was, although very fast either way, still probably about a 40 to 50% increase. And it's also doing the Lex blocks. So, you know, I think we did pretty well there. So then we're just calling parse before head, which is basically the same thing. It's just now it's taking, instead of having the Lexer as a global variable, now it's taking the state functions are receiving those as parameters. Everything's the same. Balance check is now an instance on the Lexer, and we're doing none of the meat of the functions changed. We just added how we're handling the Lexer and the methods. So you can kind of take a look at that, but it's nothing really too exciting going on there. It does the same thing. Now, if we jump into our Lex blocks, we have quite a bit of changes. I don't even think I had started this on the last video. So we've got, I wonder if I'm even using this. Nope. So we can remove that. But um, all of our types are up here, and most notably, the writable component is going to be what is sent to actually written to the files that we're using to hold the metadata. And so we've got a name, a path. Path is where the file lives relative to the root of the project. Then the metadata path is where it's output relative to the root of the build cache. And that is going to be build cache. And then you can see its output there. So set up, we'll go back. And let's see. So we've got the instance of our Lexer. We've got our state function. And we're calling Lex blocks is what starts off the lexing of the files. So then there's our walkdir function, which just takes the options.source path, which you'll remember is in project source app. That's our source path, is the app file, appdir. And that's calling new with the name of the file and the path. So new is kind of is the workhorse of this file. We've got if it's a directory, it's just going to skip over it, and if it's a file, it's going to read it and set it up to Lex. So l.run, that's similar to what we had over in the app shell, and then everything below that is handling the writing of the out files. So L.run is just a loop. It's just basically um, Lex HTML is the first state that we're giving it, and then that state gets called with an instance of the Lexer, and we just crunch along. So this is just going to call functions and pass it the Lexer. So Lex HTML takes an instance of the Lexer, which is what we have here, and it returns a state function. So we just do a bounds check, then we're checking, is it a head block, script block, style block? And you'll remember those are just up here in our constants, which because they're byte slices, they can't be a constant. It has to be a variable, but it's the same effect. So let's see. All right, and if so, we're handling basically we're writing the HTML that comes before the slot, and then it handles if it is a slot, it just leaves it empty, or it actually write the word slot. So if the component has a slot, it will write the word slot. If it does not, it will write an empty string. I think that will help later when we're parsing. I can just check, hey, is the slot variable or key, because I think it's a map, or it's a struct, so it'll be a JSON object. So if that's set to an empty string, then we know there's no slot in the component. If it has the word slot, then we know it has a slot. Anyway, then we've got these state functions that are being returned. So we've got, Lex head block, Lex script block, Lex style block, and those are all represented down here. So the Lex head block is going to basically eat the append head opening tag, get all of the keys, and put them into a map, and then it's just going to crunch along. So I guess I can just show you an instance of one that's been completed. So you'll see the name. This is our layout component. Name is layout. The path is relative to the root. This is where it lives initially. And then the metadata path is where it's output. So you'll see app is relative to the cache directory layout. And then we've got our HTML block. So this is going to be all the HTML. It does have a slot. So there's a slot, there's the after slot. And then the head block itself, if we look at the layout component, we've got this append head, and there's links, and they're all imports of files. So you can see we kind of have the header, link, footer, and those are represented down here. And that's how we're doing our imports of components, as opposed to doing it in a script block, similar to the way Svelte does it. That may seem unnecessary to kind of deviate from, the way other frameworks do it, but I wanted this to feel a lot more like just pure, like an HTML first framework. So that's kind of how that works. Let's go back to some of the metadata. So we've got our head, so you can see they're all represented. The head block is just a slice or an array of instances of those imports. And then there's no script block, but we do have a style block. So we're kind of extracting all of the pertinent information from each of the HTML files. And I'm still going to have to figure out how. There's probably still some more, parsing that needs to be done on each of the different blocks, the HTML block, script block, style block. I think, well, there definitely is some more parsing that needs to be done before we can send it to the compiler. Moving down, there's just Lex head item that just pulls out these these here. Let's see, move down. That's a pretty chunky function right there. I'll have to do some refactoring, figure out some abstractions that make sense when I start getting into testing of this. But then we're just lexing our script block, lexing our style block. Those are pretty simple. And then the lex child component block, that is a recursive function in the way where we're actually calling it once we have done all of the pages or app files. We're doing that in the walk_dir calls new, and that calls l.run. Once we get all the pages information and it writes these files to these metadata files, well, then we need to know, okay, what are the dependencies of those components, pages component. So towards the end, actually at the very end of new, we call a lex child component. And that is going to call another instance of our new function. If I can find it. Okay. So, yep. Okay. So, okay. So, yeah. So that's just, we've got a go function down here. We're calling new in a, concurrent function. And that's saying, okay, the parent, basically the page component at this point, what are the imports from that parent? And then it's looping over and calling an instance of new again. And then that in turn is getting all the instances of our components. So it ended up working out really well. I did, a couple layers deep, and it ended up getting all the components. So I was surprised that it worked as easily as it did, because that's kind of a tricky thing. You never know when you're doing recursion and things like that. You never know when, you know um, what's really going on a lot of the times. So below here is just all of our lexing methods. I'm trying to think if there's anything pertinent relative to the root of the project, relative to the build cache. Those are just helper functions to set up our paths. And I think that's pretty much all there is to this file here. So if we look at what we're going to be working on next, is we've got this app.json, which is we're just, before head just gets the doc type. Head start is just the head, and I'm not seeing the closing head tag, so I'll have to fix that. And then we've got the head end is, so we're, all the anything in the append head is going to get put into the head slot. And then we've got the body start, and we've got our body slot, if you remember, here. And that's going to be, all of our HTML. So any of this, and it even picks up things that are like that'll be put in there. This comment. So any HTML in the file will get put into this body slot. Then we just have the body end, and there's really nothing fancy going on here. Just got the end of the body, end of the HTML. So that's our app JSON. And then we have our, let's see, then the layout component is another one. We've looked at that. And then pretty much then we just have our pages, and it's just got the name path, metadata path, and we looked at all that. So that's pretty much what I worked on yesterday. It's just kind of getting the information out of the components. And then we'll have to figure out how to further parse that into something that we can actually turn into a framework. So that's all I have for today. Hope you enjoyed, and let me know if you have any ideas, comments, anything I missed, and we'll go forward from here. Thanks for watching.